why don't you lead us off?
I will lead you off because the big story in sports is how many people have fake vaccine cards. One of which Antonio Brown and two other bosses suspended for getting fake cards. They're out for 3 games with no pay. My sense is, remember Aaron Rodgers started this whole thing off by saying that, I'm immunized but I'm not vaccinated. I think this is going to be bigger.
The greatest
it's going to hit everybody, and it turns out I think most of these athletes have fake cards. This is going to be bigger.
It's not the greatest camera.
All right, Harold, your turn.
The U.S. Olympic team one step closer to not participating in the Olympics in China. From the human rights violations to now the Women's Tennis Association coming out with this strong statement and denying one of its season-ending tournaments to be in China. I think it paves the way if indeed we're not able to extract the concessions from China before the Olympics.
All right, so sports theme so far. Ari, your turn.
Sorry, back to COVID. COVID won't die. Whether it was the Delta variant or this variant or the next or the next one after that, get used to it. We're going to be living with COVID for years. That's the facts. That's science. And so live your lives. Don't let this stop you from living your life.
Thanks, gentlemen. Tomorrow on Special Report, Brett will be at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library in California. I'm Mike Emanuel. Good night from Washington.
Great show. Hey, it's Mike Emanuel. You didn't get to hear it. It's the Christmas season, after all. Good evening, America. It's 7 p.m. on the East Coast and 6 p.m. in God's country, which means it's time for Fox News Primetime. I'm Pete Hegseth. This week, we're seeing the culmination of decades of hard work, important work, and principled work. After hours of oral arguments, the Supreme Court appears set to uphold a Mississippi law that bans abortions after 15 weeks, setting the stage to at least radically alter Roe's precedent, and at best, yes, to overturn Roe v. Wade, the landmark decision that has led to the abortion of at least 62 million innocent American babies since 1973. A generational genocide of America's unborn. Now, worshipped by the left as a savior for women for far too long, Roe v. Wade seemed untouchable. Just 10 years ago, with Obama in the White House and a Supreme Court stacked with pro-choice justices, this day, it felt very far off. Until now, because of the endless efforts of pro-life groups, activists, educators, mothers. Because of major technological advancements that prove that even at the earliest stages of life, as King David wrote in Psalm 193, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. Your eyes saw my unformed body." Unformed bodies, knit together by God, not the decision of Planned Parenthood. And as a culmination, because of Donald Trump appointing 3 strong conservative Supreme Court justices, it's all there. It had to happen to make this moment possible. And sometimes it's worth taking stock and being grateful for the courage of so many generations before us for so long that made this special moment possible, a moment for life. And despite what the captured corporate media tells you, most Americans are actually against what Roe v. Wade protects, even if they don't necessarily realize it. 65% of Americans, according to a Gallup poll in 2018, say abortion in the second trimester should be illegal, even though Roe v. Wade allows it. It's actually just a small, loud, angry minority of radical feminists who really support unfettered abortion. And now, today, this week, they're in full-blown panic mode. They're terrified that the states, that we the people, not 9 people in black robes, will soon get a say determining the all-important question of life, which really should be only answered by God. And in many states, but unfortunately not all, the genocide of generations could, of the unborn, come to the end. So in their desperation, the far left is trying to discredit members of the conservative Supreme Court for simply being men.
Do any of you men
have any eggs or the possibility of carrying a fetus? How dare you talk about what a fetus wants? You have no idea.
When it comes to this decision, this issue, men don't play a factor. Men aren't being held responsible for having sex.
There's no man mentioned.
To two men, Clarence Thomas and Brett Kavanaugh, who were credibly accused of violating the sanctity of women, both of them got away with it, of course, and got on the court. But having them sort of stand up and sort of soberly argue whether or not women are owned by the state, it made me feel some kind of way.
Oof, yeah. And when it comes to the science, far-left Justice Sonia Sotomayor, this self-described wise Latina, well, she doesn't want to hear it, disgustingly comparing babies in the womb to dead people.
There's about 40% of dead people who, if you touch their feet, the foot will record. There are spontaneous acts by dead brain people. So I don't think that a response to by a fetus necessarily proves that there's a sensation of pain or that there's consciousness.
Touching the feet of dead people, that's the same as a fetus. That's science to the wise Latina. Meanwhile, their leader, the real Speaker of the House, Comrade Cortez, topped all of this idiocy with a statement of her own.
Basically.
Reminded that Brett Kavanaugh still remains credibly accused of sexual assault on multiple accounts.
I have a better camera.
And this year, the FBI admitted.
I have a better camera.
Yet the court is letting him decide whether to, get this, legalize forced birth in the U.S. No recusal. Yes, she just referred to not aborting a baby, childbirth, as legalized forced birth. That is who they are. They are extremists. And hopefully, soon, they will lose. Here to respond, Ben Shapiro, Daily Wire co-founder and host of the Ben Shapiro Show, executive producer.
I think I want to put the camera.
Shut it, and author of the authoritarian moment. Ben, thanks so much for being here. I know where your heart is on this issue. Just to step back for a moment and realize where we are, it really is a sobering moment.
It is. It could be an amazing moment. And I hope that there are 5 justices who are willing to go out there and simply overturn Roe, which is egregiously argued legally. It's a very bad legal decision. Even people who are pro-choice and are legally honest acknowledge that Roe versus Wade has no basis in the Constitution, precedent, or anything legally based in the United States and in our history and in our law. But I do wonder whether the Justice Roberts wing of the court is going to snatch a certain level of defeat from the jaws of victory here. I think there are 3 justices who pretty clearly are going to be willing to overrule Roe versus Wade and simply overturn it and send it back to the states. I think there are 3 justices for whom this is a question. That would be Justice Kavanaugh, Justice Coney Barrett, and Justice Roberts. And what you could see here is an upholding of the Mississippi abortion law, the overruling of the Planned Parenthood versus Casey viability standard, and maybe sort of a paring back of when abortion is mandatorily legal on the federal level from 21 weeks to 15 weeks or 14 weeks, but not a complete overruling of Roe. So the question is whether we get half loaf here or the whole loaf.
And if you had to guess, I know it's impossible. You can't get inside the minds of these justices, but is it a courage question? Is it a constitutional question? Is it a precedent question? What would hold back justices who many believe, probably in their heart of hearts, are pro-life?
It's certainly not a constitutional question. Roe versus Wade is one of the most egregious constitutional decisions in American history. There is literally no rationale by which Roe versus Wade has anything to do with the Constitution, with its emanations and penumbras and nonsense, or Planned Parenthood versus Casey and its ridiculous suggestion that the Constitution guarantees everybody the right to define the universe and the meaning of life in their own way, which apparently extends to killing the unborn in the womb. There's no legal basis for any of that. The real question is going to be whether there is an incrementalist wing of the court that believes that the institutional legitimacy of the Supreme Court is somehow undermined if they simply overrule Roe versus Wade. That seems to be the opinion of Justice Roberts. When it comes to Coney Barrett and Kavanaugh, my guess is that the likely outcome is a split decision, very much like Planned Parenthood versus Casey, where you have a majority opinion that's that's slightly narrower than I think pro-lifers would want. You have some concurrences that are much broader, and then you have a dissenting wing, which would be the Breyer, Kagan, Sotomayor wing of the court. we've now wrecked American law.
That would still send it at some level, in varying degrees, to different states to modify laws that have been restricted previously by Roe, which still is not everything a good thing. Let me give you a response to the left, though. I feel like the base of the far left of the Democratic Party has been rooting in Roe v. Wade ever since it was decided. I mean, it has been, in many ways, the passion of the left. Why is that? And how would they react? How will they? We saw a glimpse of it today, and it hasn't even happened yet.
I mean, they'll lose their minds. The way that the left has moved from safe, legal, and rare, which was the slogan they were using when I was a kid, to shout your abortion, which is the slogan they use now, is pretty astonishing. And the notion that American freedom, particularly freedom of women, is tied up in the ability to kill a baby in the womb has now become sort of a rote line inside the Democratic Party. There's a belief system inside the Democratic Party and for the left more broadly that all outcomes must be equal among all human beings, and that means that if you have to kill babies in the womb in order to achieve quote-unquote equal outcomes for women, giving them the opportunity to get ahead in career by getting rid of a baby they don't want, and somehow this is necessary to human freedom, that of course is vile and degraded, but that is at the root of how the left thinks about these issues.
When man plays God, ultimately that's what you get from humanism. Ben Shapiro, we knew you were the right guy to talk about this tonight. Thank you for taking some time with us here on Prime Time. We appreciate it.
Really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Also here tonight, Kayleigh McEnany, co-host of Outnumbered and author of For Such a Time as This. Kayleigh, great to have you. You know, I mentioned it, but without those 3 nominations from your boss, Donald Trump, we're not in this position, which was almost unforeseen, as I mentioned a day ago. Give our viewers some perspective, because sometimes it's easy to watch the oral arguments on cable TV, but this is a monumental moment.
It's a monumental moment. When Roe v. Wade happened, when the court decided that case, you had none other than Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who criticized the case, who said, look, why isn't the political process playing out? I'm paraphrasing her. Why not let the states decide? This was an overreach. And to hear yesterday Scott Stewart, who's arguing for the Mississippi law, essentially echoing Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who in her moments of utter honesty argued how wrongly decided this case was, it was really interesting to see. But what this all boils down to, Pete, we've had 62 million children that have perished in this country who are not with us today because of Roe v. Wade. And one of the most gross, disgusting moments I saw from the White House podium was when the press secretary was asked, is a baby at 15 weeks a baby? I saw my daughter at 10 weeks. I watched her heartbeat. I saw her on that ultrasound. Baby Blake was in fact a baby at 10 weeks. At 15 weeks with a heartbeat, fully formed arms and legs, moving rapidly, ability to detect light beneath the closed eyes. This is a baby who has life and liberty interest as well. And the fact that the White House can't acknowledge at 15 weeks a baby is a baby, it was a sad moment, I think, for our country.
It is a sad moment, but as Ben pointed out, they went from safe, legal, and rare to shout your abortion to what Conrad Cortez said today, legalized forced birth. It stopped being about the rights of women in a particular moment and became an obsession. It really did. And that's, I feel like, what you hear today. Why is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's at this point so ingrained in political partisanship and appeasing the far left that we've lost any and all sense of humanity. I mean, it sounded nice yesterday to have a nice academic civil argument, but embedded within that, and it was indeed a civil argument, but embedded within that was what you started with, Pete. Justice Sotomayor comparing a baby to a dead person, saying there's no scientific evidence that that baby feels pain. No, Justice Sotomayor, when you have here the Journal of Medical Ethics, 2 different scientists, one who supports abortion morally, one who does not, they're able to conclude that current neuroscientific evidence supports the possibility of fetal pain before the consensus cutoff of 24 weeks, perhaps at 12 weeks. We need to have a discussion about this, and comparing the baby to a dead person is not the way you do it.
You're exactly right. When you boil down the debate, the Biden administration ultimately had to say it is based on a right found in the Constitution. Anyone who looks at the ruling, anyone who looks at the Constitution knows it's not there. Kayleigh McEnany, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Pete.
All right, coming up. Rule number 1 in the Democrat handbook: never let a good crisis go to waste, even if it's a fake one. You know that. Mark Levin, the great one, will break down the nefarious motives behind the left's Omicron hysteria. That's next.
This is the greatest idea you'll ever hear.
Okay. It's an app that compares hundreds of travel sites for hotels and cars and vacation rentals, like Kayak does for flights.
So it's kayak.
Yeah, like Kayak.
Why don't you just call it kayak?
I'm calling it Canoe.
Compare hundreds of travel sites for thousands of trips. Kayak. Search one and done. Let me be direct.
Why would you pay more than double for teeth straightening with Invisalign? With Smile Direct Plus, you get a doctor to treat the smile you love for 60% less. That's a lot less. Like, choose Smile, choose Direct. He thinks it's video game.
He's scared.
And he doesn't even know it. Then he made fun. Hands are making fun.
Cold Ease can shorten your cold by 42%.